This episode is brought to you by Temptations Cat Treats. Your cat will come running for the perfectly irresistible Temptations Creamy Puree and Temptations Lickable Spoon Cat Treats. The best time to feed lickable cat treats to your cat is anytime. Feed by hand for a playful moment, in a bowl for a creamy treat, or as a topper to make mealtime fun. Visit temptationstreats.com to learn more.
Welcome back to another edition of the Disney Dish Podcast with Jim Hill. It's me, Len Testa, and this is our show for the week of Schmurz Day, April 28th, 2025. On the show today, news, including Disney's changes to Lightning Lane. Plus, what if living with the land was scary? Then in our main segment, it's the anniversary of Cinderella's Royal Table, and Jim Hill tells us how it came to be. Let's get started by bringing in the man who says that some of you never had the Bible's lessons on compassion beaten into you by nuns, and it shows. It's Mr. Jim Hill. Jim, how's it going?
It's going well, Len. And by the way, my father, the late, great Frank Hill, didn't try to instill some religious teachings on his four sons, but sadly, given it at that time anyway, my brothers and I were in training to become the next four horsemen of the apocalypse.
Exactly. Yeah.
By the way, Len, believe it or not, I was in line to become the next famine, but sadly, too much after-school snacking killed that dream. Anyway.
So close, so close.
So close. Anyway, after my brothers and I disrupted one too many Sunday services at the Union Congregational Church in beautiful downtown Maynard, Massachusetts, and I'm not saying these two events are connected, Len, but given that the Union Congregational Church actually closed its doors back in 2017 and it's since become a cultural center, just coincidence.
They're saying, you know what, we can't.
There we go. But at the time, it was politely suggested to my dad, and I'm quoting directly now from the pastor, talking to my father, to keep his hell spawn at home. But anyway. By the way, true story.
The pastor's talking to Dad. He's like, God's light shines on everyone, but not them.
No, that's it exactly. But again, if you check my hairline, look closely. There's actually a 665. I'm not the Antichrist, but I'm close. I'm very close. So
he's like in the neighborhood. Oh my God!
There we go.
That's so funny. Thank you for that. Oh my God.
No. Okay.
Also, thanks to everyone who subscribes to the show over at patreon.com/JimHillMedia, including Jessica Boughton, Liz MCap, Alley Girl 79, Brooke Rothenberg, Figment 16, and Dan Swando. Jim, this is Disney's VI pass holder team coming up with new benefits for annual pass holders this summer at Morocco's Restaurant Marrakesh in Epcot. Along with complimentary snacks and phone charging, the team is testing out ideas such as a Club Cool tasting menu and taking your Aunt Eunice to the American Adventure so she can tell them for the 100th time about hearing FDR's fireside chats live on the radio. True story.
Yeah. Had me at complimentary snacks. Okay.
I love the idea of someone from a cast member from Club Cool taking your relatives on rides you don't want to go on while you sit in a lounge. Like, how is that not an actual product?
No. I would pay good money for that service.
On to the news, folks. The Disney Dish News is sponsored by DVC Rental Store. Have you ever dreamed about staying in deluxe accommodations at Disney for a fraction of the cost? If so, the DVC Rental Store connects guests with incredible savings on Disney Vacation Club resorts. Whether you're a DVC member looking to rent your points or a guest who's looking to stay in style, the DVC Rental Store offers a seamless process for both. And don't forget, they also offer exciting point swaps for unforgettable experiences like cruises and adventures. Also, the DVC Rental Store is currently running a limited time promotion where they're now offering the lowest prices of the year. So check them out at dvcrentalstore.com/DisneyDish. All right, the news. Jim, some big news out of Walt Disney World. There appear to have been some changes made to Lightning Lane that Disney has not publicized. And these changes actually change how long you're going to wait in line. So let me give you some background here. So we count the number of people getting into both the standby line and the Lightning Lane lines at various attractions around Walt Disney World every minute of the day on certain days. Mm-hmm. And the idea is that we're trying to figure out how lines grow and shrink on a minute-by-minute basis. Okay. So before like mid-April, we thought that the number of guests being pulled from Lightning Lane to the number of guests being pulled from a standby line for a given ride was roughly 4-1 on slow days, like 6.5-1 on medium busy days, and then 10-1 when the Lightning Lane lines got really long. So 4-1 to 10-1 was the ratio, right? But now it seems like that's changed, and they're taking now fewer guests from the Lightning Lane line and more guests from the standby line. So the old ratios were like at 4-1, basically 80% of the riders for a given attraction came from Lightning Lane, and at 10-1, it's like 91% of the riders came from Lightning Lane. But now the new ratios are 1-1, 2-1, and 3-1 in very crowded situations, which means the ratio of Lightning Lane guests to standby guests has gone from an 80% Lightning Lane to 50% Lightning Lane, or 67% and 75%, right? So
wow,
yeah. So what we're doing now is we're reducing the wait in line for standby guests and ever so slightly increasing the line wait for guests in Lightning Lane. So standby guests should see 16 to 30% drops in wait times, depending on what attraction they're at in the crowd levels, and that's because those are the percentages of extra ride capacity that are now given to standby guests. So just to put it in perspective, if you're waiting on average about 30 minutes per attraction, that's 5 to 9 minutes off of a 30-minute wait. And over the course of like 10 to 15 attractions, that's 50 minutes to about 2 hours and 15 minutes saved, which is great news.
Okay, so here's the question. Why? And more importantly, why now?
I think this is Disney trying to point out that, or making changes to make things more fair or less disadvantageous for guests who aren't spending the extra money. So, I mean, this has not been a great year for anyone trying to argue that Disney is a good value for the average guest, right?
All true.
They've gotten their lumps, and you've seen them make some changes to things, right? So I think this is one of them. This is them saying we're not going to disadvantage standby guests who, let's face it, have paid a lot of money just to get into the park, right? We're not going to disadvantage them as much as we were. So making things a little bit better for people who aren't buying Lightning Lane. I think this is great news.
No, absolutely. But you know, just at the same time, you know, Disney never does anything in a vacuum,
right?
And so the notion that they even made this decision, and more to the point, what's intriguing, not publicized it. You guys discovered this, right?
Yeah, this is so the one thing is like, there's a lot of math involved. So I don't know how they could explain it without like super confusing everyone, because there is a lot of math. I mean, our listeners will get it because not only are they good looking, but intellectually very smart.
All true.
But you know, like for the general public, difficult concept to grasp. Yeah. So I don't think they can do it. Number two, it's just pointing out that there is a Lightning Lane for them. I don't know that they can do it, but yeah, I'm happy to call it out.
No. It's great news.
Yeah, so we've seen this happen. So the easiest way to measure this is to find attractions where the merge point is visible from outside the attraction. And so there's a lot of those in Fantasyland. Spaceship Earth is one of them. In Epcot, also Living with the Land. So that's where we've noticed this, and it varies, you know, a little bit. I think, you know, the cast members aren't doing it 100% of the time at every attraction, but that seems to be the new rule now. So that's fantastic.
No, it's great news. But again, just kind of intriguing that it's happening now.
It should lower wait times across the board. So if you're I know a lot of people who listen to the show look at wait times as a proxy for crowds. So this is actually going to lower standby waits without changing crowd levels.
Cool.
Something like that. All right. Also, over at the Animal Kingdom, we got news that Animal Kingdom is hosting evening extra magic hours on Wednesday, July 2nd. And they're taking that over from the Magic Kingdom, which typically has the extended evening hours on Wednesday. So Magic Kingdom hours for July don't seem to be out yet. The park was open until 10 p.m. last year, so going until midnight doesn't seem like it's a terrible idea. So, Jim, I think this could be to allow the Magic Kingdom Pyro team to test for July 3rd and 4th, because this is July 2nd.
Oh, excellent point.
Yeah, if you need some more time to like test some stuff out, You do that then, or maybe it's related to the new Starlight Parade, which I don't think we don't have a starting date for that yet, do we?
No, and I'm kind of intrigued by that because obviously once that starts up, this park has to stay open later till it gets dark to accommodate this.
So those are my two theories so far.
Okay. Well, let's see which one bears fruit.
Also, congratulations to Victoria and Alberts for earning their second consecutive Michelin star last week. I think it deserves 2 stars, but whatever. Also, Kappa at Four Seasons also earned their star again, so congratulations to them.
By the way, just a quick side note here. Did you see that when they were awarded this star, the Michelin Man actually came out for the photo opportunity?
I love that. Like, I know a lot of people in that photo, and they have looks of absolute joy on their face. Like, oh my God, it's the Michelin Man.
There we go. But I love that.
Fantastic. Also, last week, Disney came out with a free dining plan for kids. It applies to children ages 3 through 9. You've got to stay at a Disney hotel, and you have to have a dining plan added for all the guests ages 10 and above. Disney is going out of its way, Jim, to tell travel agents that this can be combined with other special offers for 2026. Yeah. And that's rare. Stacking discounts is rare.
I get that, but at the same time, this is an intriguing situation right now, and whatever gets people on planes and down to Orlando is what they are going to do.
Yeah, and speaking of getting people on planes, Universal Orlando, their corporate parent, Comcast, had a earnings call this morning as we're recording this. They noted, Jim, that theme park revenue was down 5% versus 2024, and they said that was driven by lower guest attendance, including the impact of fires for Universal Studios Hollywood. But 5% is 5%.
And no, absolutely. But let's also be honest here. How many people are putting off their trip at least to Universal Orlando because there's a brand new park opening on May 22nd? I mean, Disney kind of saw the same thing out ahead of when Animal Kingdom opened in 98. Likewise, when the studio opened in 89. So again, not entirely a surprise.
Yeah, and that should resolve some of itself this next quarter, so we'll see. Also, Jim, speaking of Universal, you have an Epic Universe Ministry of Magic virtual Q-tip, don't you?
Well, yes, and this comes by way of Eric and Lauren Hersey, who got in to the very first annual pass holder preview on April 17th. And at that point, and remember, Len got into the park earlier than that and was able to walk through the entire queue of Minister of Magic, but not experience the ride itself, which is still evidently having some operational issues. But during that day, the Ministry of Magic was on a virtual queue, and both Eric and Lauren, when it would become available, would grab their phones, and in fact, they were in the Toadstool Cafe and said it was amazing to watch everyone around them on their phones, like hammer, trying to get into Ministry of Magic. But the thing is, they throw open 4 specific times that are available. And the interesting thing that Eric learned was that everybody immediately went for the top of the list, for the very first one listed, whereas he went with the bottom one, the 4th one in the queue. And he was successful in landing reservations for the family. In fact, I want to say they got on it at like 5:30 in the afternoon.
That's not bad.
No, not at all. But on the other hand, Lauren went with the top and was repeatedly frustrated, as were everyone else around in the Toadstool Cafe. So there's the tip, folks. Don't go for the first time available. Go for the latest one available, and chances are you'll do better.
Oh, that's a great tip. Thank you.
Again, thanks to the Hershey's.
All right. Speaking of Universal, we were testing Islands of Adventure touring plans earlier this week and noticed that the outdoor section of Skull Island Reign of Kong was open again. That's good news. I think, Jim, this closed sometime in 2023 for like technical issues and never reopened. The ride could still operate because it was built to avoid the outdoor section in case of rain anyway.
Oh, true.
So you never had to do it. So remember, this is the left turn that you used to make right after boarding. But then when they closed that section, you just went straight into the one section of the ride. So the outdoor section is really nice, especially at night. So this is a good thing too.
Oh yeah. And coupled with the fact that you get your dramatic entry. I mean, you literally, the gates open and you roll in and then mayhem ensues.
Exactly. Yeah, fantastic. So I'm glad to see that open. One last little bit of Universal news. Universal Horror Unleashed earlier this month provided a little bit more backstory for one of its houses at Universal Horror Unleashed in Las Vegas, which opens August 14th. And I'll quote to you what it is. It says, inspired by the historic Dust Bowl era, when severe dust storms devastated the Midwest, this original story will take guests back in time to a dry, barren 1930s farmland ravaged by farmers and taken over by horrifying inhabitants arising from the land, bloodthirsty scarecrows bent on revenge. As guests start their journey in the middle of a windstorm before entering an abandoned farmhouse, they'll encounter the monstrous and gigantic creatures made of remnants of dried human flesh and bones of beasts, merged with burlap, root, and vine, with only one mission at hand: obtain vengeance for their ravaged land. And I'm mentioning this, Jim, just to give Universal credit for not going with the obvious title of Dying with the Land.
I hate to say this, but I'm reading that description. It's like I've actually stayed at a hotel off the strip, very much like this, Len.
Okay, my original joke was remnants of dried human flesh and bones of beasts merged with burlap, root, and vine. Sounds like half the inhabitants of the Upper East Side.
There we go.
But we're just going to workshop this as we go along.
Okay,
right?
There you go, folks. There you go.
On to surveys. Paige sent in a survey, a Universal survey, that asks, do you like us more than Disney? Ooh. And the questions are this. Which theme park would you say provides the best experience with each of the following things? And there's 2 columns, one where you check Universal and one where you check Disney. And it's things like food and beverage offerings, seamlessness or hassle-free nature, ease of planning, value for money, customized or personalized visit, rides and attractions, and guest service. Man, I would love to see that survey.
Oh, yeah. But okay. They're definitely checking the pool temperature now, Len.
Yeah, definitely. 100%. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. We're going to talk more in listener questions about Universal survey stuff. And let's go to listener questions now. This one's from Sarah Otero, who says, we recently went on our first trip to Mexico City, and after listening to your podcast with Ricky from San Angel Inn and La Cava a few months ago, we visited the original San Angel Inn because it was a must-do.
Wow.
I know! We got back a couple of weeks ago, and I have to say that our visit to the San Angel Inn was better than I could have imagined. The food was delicious, the drinks were well poured, and most of the restaurant itself was stunning. While the boats of Somichicao don't sail by as you eat, the gardens and hacienda are stunning. I can see why the Disney Imagineers who were working on the Mexico Pavilion approached the ownership to operate in Epcot. Oh, that's nice.
Oh, Sarah, thanks for sharing that. Oh, got to check that out at some point.
I love when people go visit things in the real world that they see in Epcot. That's right up our alley.
Absolutely.
All right, here's an email from Adam, who's a psychology professor, and says, it was very interesting that Universal included some personality test items on the survey you talked about last week. You could tailor marketing materials to the potential guests based on their personality. For instance, if you know the guest is extroverted, you could show images and highlight attractions where they meet new people and interact with others. And if they're introverted, you do the opposite. There you go. Okay. For the openness to experience factor, you would highlight more adventurous attractions and experiences. And for people more traditional, you could market more conventional things. And Adam mentioned that Disney does some tailoring like this. Years ago, my wife and I booked separate rooms at the same resort at Disney. And then in parentheses, he said it's a long story. Okay.
Okay.
And when we got our mail about our upcoming trip, they were pretty different. Apparently, Disney thought I made more money than my wife, and my mailer talked about high-end add-ons in the signature restaurants, while my wife's discussed quick-serve options. How about that? I didn't know it was that level of detail.
Wow. How would they have gleaned that from a room reservation?
And I love that Adam remembered that and was able to write in. So we have the most interesting listeners.
We do.
Also, Ant Carter, who's in market research, added in about that survey and said, I suspect that Universal is also running a segmentation study. You create 5 to 7 personas to better understand how to target people by message, channel, and offering. For example, a group might make 25% of your consumer base, let's call them nostalgic Nathans, and they might be the most likely to visit in the next 12 months. They'll have attitudes and behaviors in common, so we can target nostalgic Nathans with like Spotify ads that focus on an upcoming park anniversary and holidays. around school holidays because they tend to have kids. To do this, they run something called a cluster analysis to look for these groupings, and in future surveys, they can add golden questions so that they can easily identify these segments in the future without the need for 50 questions. So golden question is one of those questions that gets you the answer right away without having to ask a bunch more.
When people pop the hood on this aspect of marketing, it frightens me. I feel like such a rube. I fall for all of this.
Yes, click now, click here. It's fantastic.
Okay. And I'm like, oh, okay.
From our friend Veronica, who says, I saw the announcement about the kids-free dining offer in 2026, and the announcement seems to imply it's stackable with other discounts. It is. I know it all depends on how much the rack rates and adult dining plan costs for 26, but it seems like if you can stack a discount with kids-free dining, it might be a decent deal. I figure with the soft international travel and topsy-turvy domestic economy, the domestic discounts need to be pretty strong because they can't get lightning lane money if nobody goes to the parks.
Yep.
That's the thing. I mean, have you ever thought about the dining plan as a lost leader? That's hysterical.
Oh, no. Whatever gets asses and seats on those planes.
Exactly.
That's the point.
What was the airline today? Was it Southwest that said they couldn't provide earnings guidance anymore for the rest of the year?
Yeah, I mean, that again, that's what's so interesting about this moment. And remember, folks, we are still in countdown mode for the Disney earnings call for May 7th.
May 7th, yeah.
A day that will live in infamy.
I think we're going to know everyone on that call. I swear
There we go.
A couple of other emails. This one's from Greg McCann, who says, I just wanted to drop a quick line as we got back on Sunday from a 2-week trip to Orlando. I last went to Orlando nearly 31 years ago, so things have changed quite a bit.
Okay, yes.
Wow,
yes.
yeah. We stayed at Port Orleans French Quarter with one night in the middle at Lowe's Pacific to visit Universal for 2 days. We got so much more out of it thanks to all the background information I've gleaned from your shows for the last 5 years.
Oh, okay.
I'm looking forward to catching up on the couple of shows I missed while I was away, and we'll be sure to keep listening as you both will fill the Disney-shaped hole we're all feeling, having returned to the real world in the United Kingdom. It's from Greg, Carla, Evie, and Henry. Hello, Evie and Henry.
Yes.
Oh, that was really nice. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, Jim, a bunch of people wrote in with this following question for you. I'm going to read Amanda Budakover's question. Here it is. Why did National Public Radio's Planet Money show thank you at the end of a recent episode about egg pricing? So, Jim, I'm going to ask you 3 questions here.
Okay.
And you can say yes or no. Does this have anything to do with the alleged time you and Nina Totenberg did limoncello shots before a Federal Reserve meeting? Or was it the time Catherine Graham's caterers didn't show up and you and Bob Edwards had to make emergency canapes from a Georgetown bodega? When you tried to squirm past someone at Pete Buttigieg's place and a tipsy Mendelit Del Barco asked you to lambada? Anything to do with anything? All right, we're gonna take a quick commercial break. When we come back, Jim tells us the story of Cinderella's royal table. We'll be right back.
Hello, Nigel here. I couldn't help noticing that you're still awake. Now, I'm an owl. I'm supposed to be up at night, but you need your sleep. So if it's your allergy symptoms that are keeping you up, here's a word to the wise. Try Xyzal. You see, Xyzal works fast to relieve sneezing, runny nose, itchy watery eyes, and itchy nose and throat. And it keeps going strong for 24 hours, so you can get your sleep and wake up refreshed and ready for a productive day ahead. Be wise, all. Take Xyzal at night. Use as directed. Starts working in 45 minutes.
Hey there, I'm David Harbour from Marvel Studios' Thunderbolts. I don't mean to interrupt your favorite podcast. Well, actually, maybe I do, just a little bit, but I have a good reason. My new film hits theaters Friday, May 2nd, and it's got everything. Action, suspense, humor, heart, and Bob. Who's Bob? Find out by getting tickets now. Okay, now back to the show, or on to the next ad.
Hilton brings you new ways to stay. With experiences that let you capture the glory days. Introducing the Graduate Hotels. Each inspired by local college towns, these stays are always original and never boring. Get in touch with traditions all across the country and enjoy a stay that's a class above the rest. Book at Graduate Hotels with Hilton Honors Points at Hilton.com. It's a win-win. Hilton, for the stay.
And we're back. All right, Jim, this is the anniversary of the opening of Cinderella's Royal Table, right?
Well, actually, it's the 28th anniversary of when King Stefan's Banquet Hall got its name.
Jim?
Yep.
I believe the story starts with a certain phrase that you need to give us.
Dear Lord. Okay, once upon a time.
Thank you. Once upon a time, 28 years ago.
28 years ago. There we go. King Stefan's Banquet Hall got its name changed to Cinderella's Royal Table. Of course, the real question here, Len, is how did that restaurant, located upstairs in Cinderella Castle at the Magic Kingdom, and by the way, you have some stats about how truly crazy popular and profitable this place is, right?
Oh, yeah. So it's if you look at how much money different restaurants earn in the Magic Kingdom, I mean, Be Our Guest is far and away number one, right? It's I think it might be the most popular restaurant in Walt Disney World. Cosmic Rays as a quick service is up there. Crystal Palace is actually up there too. Liberty Tree Tavern, Pecos Bales, Casey's Corner. All of them, though, are way, way, way bigger than Cinderella's Royal Table. So Be Our Guest, I think, has, 550 seats?
Yeah, at least that many.
Yeah. Cinderella's Royal Table has something like 140. And so when you think about the average ticket price, I think for Be Our Guest, and also Be Our Guest doesn't serve breakfast, but Cinderella's Royal Table does. I think Be Our Guest, the average ticket's somewhere around $162-ish, give or take. And then Cinderella's Royal Table is $144, give or take. Yeah, so that's super interesting there. But Cinderella's Royal Table does really, really well. It's better than Pinocchio Village House. It's better than Skipper Canteen. It makes more money than Columbia Harbor House. And again, with only 140 seats. So.
Oh, yeah. No. Though, again, the real question here is that how is it that, again, located upstairs, Cinderella Castle, why was it originally named after Princess Aurora's dad, one of the two kings we meet in Sleeping Beauty? And that seems to be kind of a big mistake on WDI's part, something they should have caught during the 6 years, Len, between when Project Florida was first announced in November of 1965 and when the Walt Disney World Resort kicked open its doors October of 71.
Okay, so it is definitely called Cinderella Castle.
It is.
Okay.
But here's the thing, Len. I actually got to talk with the two Disney veterans who had a kind of protracted, rather painful conversation about this topic in the fall of 1970, a full year before the Walt Disney World Resort. And okay, so to set the stage properly here, Len, you're 30-year-old Dave Smith, and you've just been tasked by Roy O. Disney, Walt's brother, to start the Disney Corporate Archive. And Smith, who got a BA in history and a master's degree in library science at UC Berkeley, not to mention Len spending a year and a half in Washington, D.C. interning at the Library of Congress before then returning to Southern California to spend 5 years as a research librarian at UCLA. He's determined to do a good job at Disney, to be the best possible corporate archivist that he could be. Wow. And also worth noting here that when Dave started at Disney, Len, kind of a dark time in Hollywood. I mean, just weeks before Smith effectively started setting up shop at the Mouse House, MGM had its infamous auction over in Culver City in May of 1970. I mean, this is when many of that studio's crown jewels, things like Dorothy's ruby slippers from The Wizard of Oz and Charlton Heston's Chariot from Ben-Hur, got sold off to the highest bidder.
I'm envisioning the best Chappell Roan video ever with both of those things, but go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, that's great. All right, but here's the thing. Kirk Kerkorian takes that money and then plows it into the construction of the MGM Grand, which when it opened in Vegas in December of 73 was the biggest, most expensive, and most luxurious hotel and casino on the Strip. But okay. But again, this is a time when it seems like a lot of history associated with old Hollywood is slipping away, and Dave's determined that will not happen at Disney. He's determined to catalog everything that the studio has done, and more to the point, everything that it's still doing. So,
oh wow,
okay. Late summer of 1970, Smith sends out a memo to every division in Walt Disney Productions, which saying in essence, can you please CC the archive on everything you do going forward. For example, you issue a press release, please send a copy to my office. You print a poster for a film, can you forward one of those so we have it to put in our files? If you do a book related to a new Disney film, please send a copy so we can put it in our corporate library.
Wow. Where's he going to put this stuff? But go ahead.
Well,
right,
no, that in fact, so interesting that you bring that up, because today there are no less than 6 off-site warehouses filled with this stuff, and it's all dutifully collected by the archive and lovingly stored and put aside for prosperity. But anyway, so again, just to stress here, it's the late summer, early fall of 1970, and Dave's assembling the building blocks of what will become the official Disney corporate archive. And around the same time, Len, Smith receives a copy in the mail of the preview edition of the Walt Disney World Guidebook. And I know a lot of Disney Dish listeners are familiar with this 24-page glossy booklet. D23 reprinted it a few years back. And it's the one that has the picture of the model of Walt Disney World, the resort, on the cover, and white writing on the front that says, "The Vacation Kingdom of the World will open in October of 71. So Dave, before he takes that out of the envelope and before he puts it in the filing cabinet, sits down and reads the preview edition of the Walt Disney World Guidebook. And then he comes across this puzzling piece of text that refers to something that's being built down in Florida, which reads, "Soaring 18 stories above Fantasyland will be the magnificent Cinderella Castle, highest point in the Magic Kingdom. Inside the castle, guests will dine in royal splendor in King Stefan's Royal Banquet Hall." And now, gotta understand, Len, before Dave took his gig at Disney, he had studied the company's history religiously. He had watched every film the studio had ever made, which is how Smith knew right off the top of his head, Disney nerd like myself, that King Stefan wasn't Cinderella's dad, but rather Princess Aurora's dad. So Smith picks up the phone and calls, well, back then it was called Wed Enterprises. Anyway, he's connected to 1401 Flower Street, where you've been, Len, Disney Imagineering corporate headquarters, just up the street from the studio in Burbank, one town over in Glendale. And after explaining to numerous folks who work at Imagineering and why he's calling, David eventually gets patched through to the office of one John Hench.
Okay.
Right.
Start at the top and work your way down.
There we go. No, that's it exactly. Because at this point in Hench's illustrious career, he is the senior vice president in charge of Wed Enterprises. And again, want to remind you folks, this story starts fall of 1970. And at this point, Len, John Hench has already worked for the Walt Disney Company for 32 years. All right? I mean, he was hired in 39 to help with production of Fantasia. And whereas David...
And Dave Smith still has the plastic wrap on his badge.
I would be surprised at this point if Dave Smith has actually worked for Disney for 32 days. All right?
Yeah, okay.
So kind of an interesting power dynamic to this conversation. The studio event dealing with the punk kid. All right, but Dave, because he takes his job seriously and wants to contribute to make the corporate archives a vital resource at the studio, starts to tell Hench about what he just read in the preview edition of the guidebook and how it's crucial that someone get a hold of the folks down in Florida as quickly as possible. And
they're making a huge mistake.
Yeah. and this is the thing. And he's like, because King Stefan, and Hench interrupts and goes, yes, because King Stefan is not Cinderella's father. Yes, I know that.
Yes.
All right. And he goes on to say, look, not only did I work with Mary Blair on Cinderella, first of all, figuring out how to take Mary's distinctive use of color and bold design and translate that into the film we sent out into theaters in February of 1950. But John then went on to say that he was the guy who sold Walt on the idea that Sleeping Beauty should be a moving tapestry. In fact, fact, Len, you love this because I know, again, you're a member of the MoMA.
Yep.
Hench described how he actually went to the cloisters, the offsite.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and it turns out that the unicorn tapestry there, the famous one, is the one that he's like, ooh, okay. He takes pictures, he gets the postcard, he does sketches, he brings that back to Ivan Earle and said, could we do something with this in the early 1950s? And that's how we wound up with the film that arrived in theaters January of 59, looking the way it did.
Oh, I've got I threw the tapestries, the unicorn tapestries from the cloisters into the show notes in case anyone wants to see them.
Very cool. All right, so what Hench very quickly gets across to Dave Smith is like, yeah, look, I'm kind of intimately familiar with both Cinderella and Sleeping Beauty. I spent years of my life working on them before I came over to Imagineering. And look, I know who King Stefan is. And more to the point, I was the guy who decided that the sit-down restaurant inside of Cinderella Castle would be named after Princess Aurora's dad. And why would John Hench do this? Fun fact, folks, in Disney's original animated version of Cinderella, Prince Charming's dad doesn't actually have a name. He's just the king. And John, as he's designing this elegant eatery for the Magic Kingdom, and by the way, when Walt Disney decided it was time to replace the Red Wagon Inn at Disneyland with a different sit-down restaurant, he put John Hench in charge of this project. And because, well, while he wanted the side of this new restaurant that guests would see to fit right in with being right off the hub and Main Street adjacent, he wanted the back of the house portion of this new Disneyland restaurant, the stuff that guests wouldn't see, to be as modern and up-to-date as possible. And so to make that happen, Walt actually signed John up for night classes in food and restaurant management at UCLA, which, by the way, remember early in the story, that's where Dave Smith...
That's where Dave went. Yeah. Okay.
So again, Hench actually knew how to properly design the back of house portion of Plaza Inn and used those same skills when he was working on the restaurant inside of Cinderella Castle. And by the way, if we can take a moment here, that 18-story tall structure in the Magic Kingdom, again, Cinderella Castle is kind of a misnomer because, let's be honest, bulk of the film, Cinderella lives in a nearby chateau with her stepmother, Lady Tremaine, and her two stepsisters, Drusilla and Anastasia. And now, mind you, King's Castle, close. I mean, Cinderella can see it every morning outside of her bedroom window. But again, she lives high up in a tower, so I would imagine she can see a lot of things from up there.
Sure.
More to the point, even at the end of this Disney animated film, Cinderella still doesn't live in the castle. We see her marry.
Oh, that's right.
That's right. She marries Prince Charming. She climbs in a golden coach, and those two ride off. We have to assume on their honeymoon, but maybe Prince Charming, finally wants to get away from Dad, who seems a trifle controlling.
Yeah, so Cinderella never actually lives in the castle in the film, does she?
No, not at all. And if anything, we don't know if the kids rolled down the street and got a place of their own. Just saying.
This feels like one of those hotels on 192 that includes the words like magic and kingdom in it, like Magic Kissimmee Kingdom Motel on 192. Yeah, okay, all right.
Whatever gets you there. So anyway, we have Cinderella Castle, middle of the Magic Kingdom, which doesn't belong to Cinderella, but rather to a king who doesn't have a name, and John Hench needs to name the restaurant he's designing for the inside of the structure after someone.
Okay.
So Hench remembers that, well, all right, Disney's animated version of Sleeping Beauty has two kings. King Stefan, who mentioned earlier, is Princess Aurora's dad, and King Hubert, who is Prince Philip's father. And by the way, another little weird bend in the story, the king in Cinderella and King Hubert from Sleeping Beauty, they really look like they could be brothers. I mean, both are round, blonde, have interesting-looking mustaches, and are prone to emotional outbursts, and which, again, is probably why Prince Charming is looking to move out of the castle.
Exactly.
All right, anyway, so why would Hench, when it came to picking between these two animated monarchs, why would he opt to go with King Stefan rather than King Hubert? Well, Jim Schul, Len and Mai's collaborator over on Disney Unpacked, our video series for Patreon, he has an interesting theory. He believes that John went with King Stefan over King Hubert because Stefan has an S in it. And that name with a swoopy S would lend itself to a more pleasing graphic package, a marquee that would be more likely to capture guests' attention.
King Stefan is more memorable too. You've got the hard K and the hard S sound.
Also, yeah.
And then if you say King Hubert, the H kind of gets swallowed up by the G.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's a more pleasing sounding name too. Okay,
absolutely,
all right, makes sense.
Okay, anyway, long story short, Hench said to Dave Smith, "Look, I needed a king's name for this restaurant that we're building inside of a castle at Walt Disney World. Prince Charming's dad didn't have a name, so I borrowed a name from Sleeping Beauty. I don't honestly think that guests will care about the restaurant's name.
Oh,
right. They're just going to enjoy dining in regal splendor."
Yeah, I mean, if we've learned anything, Jim, in the 10 years that we've been doing this show, it's that Disney fans are not focused on minutia.
Oh God, no.
We will all let, you and me included, let minor mistakes slide.
Well, all right. Now, again, we are talking about Fantasyland, Len. So yes,
exactly. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, when have we ever complained about minor nitpicking?
All right. So, jumping right into it here, it turns out, what a surprise! Disney theme park fans do care. In fact, every year,
shocker,
guest relations will either get letters from folks or have people drop in person to City Hall to say, King Stefan is Sleeping Beauty's dad, not Cinderella's. And the plaid who was standing behind the counter would politely record their comment and promise to pass this along to Walt Disney World management. And Len, you'll love this. Things finally come to a head in the fall of 1996, which I want to remind you is when
25th anniversary.
Walt Disney World.
Oh,
yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay.
I know where you're going with this.
Okay. It's the.
Yeah. Let's focus more attention on the castle.
There we go. It's the 25th anniversary where the resort decides to paint Cinderella Castle Pepto-Bismol pink. And on the heels of this decorative decision, the number of guests going into City Hall to complain skyrockets.
Oh yeah.
With now the typical comment being lodged at City Hall being, "I hate the castle cake. Oh, and you guys named the restaurant inside of the castle after the wrong king." All right, now the Magic Kingdom can't do anything about the castle cake because the 25th anniversary celebration, which was originally supposed to run through September of the following year, 1997, but in fact get extended, Len, 4 months, not until January of 1998. They can't do anything about that, but they can address the other issue guests keep coming up, which again brings us back to April of 1997, where King Stefan's Banquet Hall gets its name changed to Cinderella's Royal Table. And I have to tell you, Len, just a few months after that, I was at a media event with Dave Smith and kind of wandered over and chatted with him and mentioned the name change. And he smiled and said, "Well, it took over 25 years, but it now has the correct name."
The company finally trusted him after a quarter of a century.
There we go. Now, on the other hand, John Hench, who, by the way, again, John, if ever anything got painted at any of the Disney theme parks, John, who was the king of color, he signed off on it. So this meant that John Hench had actually picked out the 3 different shades of pink paint that were used for Cinderella Castle.
Oh.
So the spring of 1997 wasn't an especially good time for Mr. Hench, between the name change and the fact that people were complaining so loudly about the castle cake. Now, mind you, John stays in Disney's employ through February of 2004. In fact, that's the year that John passes away at the age of 95. And not to put too fine a point on this, Len, but remember, when we started this story, and Dave Smith had his initial call with John Hench, John had already worked for Disney for 32 years at this point, where when we lose him in 2004, he had then worked for another 33 years for Disney. So wow. 65 years at the same company. That's just astounding.
Amazing.
Now, worth pointing out, Dave Smith, no slouch either. He winds up working for Disney for 40 years. years. Retires in June of 2010. He then hands off the running of the Disney Corporate Archive to the very capable Becky Klein, and we lose David in February of 2019.
I remember. So I met Dave once at a press event, and for some reason, media relations decided to pair us up, like as we're travel buddies on the bus.
Oh, wow.
And he could not be a nicer guy. He was just, full of information. This was the press event for Soarin'. And back then we're on the bus and I'm like, he was like, what do you think of it? I'm like, it's a little odd that it's in Future World, because it was Future World at the time. And, we're soaring over California, because that means that in the future we'll all be hang gliding over the Golden State, right? And he actually looked at me. He's like, we're working on soaring around the world. This was like 2005.
Oh, yeah. No, he had, by this point in the company's history, he had an amazing relationship with Imagineering. In fact, I remember being in his office one day and phone rang, he picked it up, and it was the folks who were working on, I want to say, the Mr. Toad themed restaurant for Euro Disneyland. And Dave sat there and listened, and then went over to his files and consulted thing, and he read back to them the proper spelling of J. Thaddeus Toad. At that point, they didn't name anything without checking with David. And I want to say it's no, it has 2 D's, Thaddeus. Yeah, but he was a great guy. And by the way, if you enjoyed today's tale about how King Stefan's Banquet Hall got renamed Cinderella's Royal Table, be sure and head over to YouTube, where you'll find the latest installment of Jim Schul's Disney Journey series. This veteran Imagineer, as he continues to talk about the just announced Universal Studios UK project, also touches on how in the coming year, Len, Walt Disney Studios Park in Paris is going to be rebranded as Disney Adventure World. And they're all going to try to make us understand no apostrophe S. It's Disney Adventure World.
Right. Like Disney California Adventure.
There we go. Because ironically enough, that makes it a more easily searchable term on Google. So that's why it's named what it's named.
I'm gonna introduce the marketing team to a term called stemming, but in search engine construction. But okay, fair enough.
Okay.
All right, that's gonna do it for the show today. You can help support our show by subscribing over at patreon.com/JimHillMedia, where we're posting exclusive shows every week. Our latest video is with Imagineer Jim Schull on the different iterations of Snow White's adventures. You can find more of Jim at jimhillmedia.com and more of me, Len, at touringplanes.com. We're produced spectacularly by Eric Hersey and David Gray, who'll be performing their 3-hour rock opera Marshall Plan, including songs 1948 and Ball Bearing Wizard, at Harry's Heydays, a celebration of Harry S. Truman's legacy, starting at 6 p.m. on Friday, May 2nd, 2025, at the Grandview Amphitheater. That's off Byers Road, across from Meadowmere Park, in beautiful downtown Grandview, Missouri. While Eric and David are doing that, please go onto iTunes and rate our show and tell us what you'd like to hear next. For Jim, this is Len. We'll see you on the next show.